Learning by doing.
We do. We learn by doing. We are live. Hey, Monday morning.
Good morning. It's raining in Pittsburgh.
Oh, I think it's gonna rain here in Philly. Before I forget, did you see that there is a new Britney Spears "It's Going to Be May" meme going
No.
around? Yes,
No.
it is. It's from the "Oops, I Did It Again" video. She's in the red cat suit, and it just says, "It's just so typically May."
That's
underneath it, so we don't
have to do the NSYNC
don't
one.
do the NSYNC Justin Timberlake one anymore if we don't want to.
Yeah, I'm kind of over JT, TBH.
A little bit.
I would just like to hear from different people.
Yeah, I think that's some of what it comes down to. Like, I think he's had a lot of time, and he hasn't. Like, if he puts out something really interesting, then that's cool. But he hasn't in a little while for me. So I'd like to hear from different folks.
I'm more interested in what his wife is producing currently.
She's doing some really fascinating stuff on the television.
Yeah, she did something else. I can't remember what it was, but there was a third season of The Sinner.
Yeah, she's got something on Freeform right now, I think.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Summer?
It is Cruel Summer. Yeah, because I saw the advert for it, and I was like, Jessica Biel's at it again. Go,
Billboard's
girl.
work, folks. There's 7 of them on 95. That's why I know the name of that show.
And I don't leave my house.
Yeah. I leave mine every day.
Every day.
Well, should we jump into what we're doing now?
I'll say so, yeah. We left a little bit of time if people are logging on, grabbing a cup of coffee. Getting ready
themselves for our thoughts. So we decided, we were talking and thinking that we used to do a format on our blogs called Fridays.
Yeah.
We talked about 5 things folks needed to know. And sometimes what we realized is that there weren't 5 things a week that we wanted people to know about.
Especially when everything was COVID.
Like when everything was COVID, I was like, there's not 5 other things. There's not. And so we wanted to open up a segment in these lives to kind of say, here's something that is happening this week and that we do want to talk about, but do it in a longer form than the blog let us do. And then not have the pressure to find stuff that maybe wasn't as worth your time.
Yeah.
So if you missed the old format, let us know, but we're going to give this one a run for a little while. So every Monday, we're going to show up with at least one thing. Obviously, if there's absolutely nothing, then we'll skip this segment. But with the stuff you should know. So today we come at you with 2 things. Both of them are quasi-depressing. So if
you're watching our videos, you know this already.
We try to do sarcasm and serotonin at the same time. So buttons. The first one is one that I have brought to the table a little bit more solo because it's my thoughts, feelings, and expertise rather than Dr. Aaron's. So the second one, I promise, we'll bring her back in. I'm not that egotistical.
I'm just going to take a break.
She's going to go get a cuppa. The cat's going to show up. It's all going to be fine. So what I would like to talk about very briefly is a gentleman, an accused felon by the name of Joshua Duggar, who, if you don't know who that is, that's fine. He is the oldest or one of the oldest children of the Duggar family who became very famous in the United States by being on a television show called 19 Kids and Counting. You heard that correctly. That was on for a while. And they were they were always on the cover of People. It was a thing. This show was a thing. And then in 2015, it came out that he was a minor in 2015, and came out that he was accused of sexual assault of several other minors, including a few of his sisters. And so the show was canceled. At that point, no charges were filed. And the Duggar family made the decision to discipline Josh within the confines of their church. And I'll get back to that in a minute. So nothing else happened. Those of us who follow fundamentalist movements, of which the Duggars are an active part of a particular one called ATI that I'll get back to in a minute, have kind of thought he probably did it. And he even said he did. It was just he didn't know it was wrong. There was a lot of kind of very, the sins of childhood kind of stuff. So it was there was a lot of us who were just kind of waiting for another shoe to drop. And so last week that shoe dropped. and he was arrested by the federal government. The Department of Homeland Security arrested Joshua Duggar, and on charges of which, and we can say this out loud because we're not monetized yet. All the other channels have to be like coy about it, but he was arrested for possessing and transmitting child pornography, and by the feds. There is the whole indictment by the District of Arkansas, it's very, very, very kind of thing. And they have said, I've read several legal commentators at this point that kind of say the feds don't really show up until they have a slam dunk case. He has the stuff. And they listed a really short window of time, which kind of leads some legal commentators to believe they operated a sting on a server on the dark web. And because this is the distribution and solicitation of child pornography is a big part of the dark web, and it is a big part of how a lot of people on the dark web make money. And so, to my understanding from what we've read so far, they have not charged that he has made money off of this, but it doesn't, certainly I would imagine they haven't slammed the door on the possibility once they find that they'll add that to the list of charges. So as always, our go-to legal commentator on pop culture is Emily D. Baker, and the link to her video talking about this will be in the show notes. Mm-hmm. But I don't know anything about the law really beyond what Emily tells me and what I saw once on Law and Order. What I do know a lot about is fundamentalist conservative movements. And I have some thoughts. So for me, Joshua Duggar is a really great example of understanding without condoning, because you got to understand some of the movement to understand the actions around him. I say that, and let me also say that Joshua Duggar is a criminal if these charges are accurate, which again, everything, alleged criminal, all of those caveats. But being conservative and fundamentalist even does not make you a criminal automatically. There is not a causation situation here. The system that allowed him to remain in his community and to remain in his marriage is something that we want to talk about. Sorry for that alarm going off.
I was about to say, what is that noise?
I didn't think we had an alarm test. It's off. Cool. Manufacturing's fun. Manufacturing's fun. Somebody would be here in my office right now if that was an actual problem. So we're just going to keep going like it's not. So the culture that allowed him to remain in his community, like I said, is part of the issue. So there's a bunch of links we're going to put below in the show notes. And I do mean a deluge, because I am not the only person talking about this. A lot of other people are talking about this. This is not abnormal. One of the links that's going to be in your show notes is something that I'm actually going to really briefly screen share right now, which is a Facebook post that was going around for a little while. There we go. Make this bigger if I can. So just want to show you, this is the Facebook account Thriving Forward. Here's a picture of the press statement from the Western District of Arkansas's U.S. District Attorney's Office. And I know a lot of you guys can't read what's on the side here because Facebook is dumb and won't let me enlarge that. But what she says, this person that runs the Facebook account, makes the point that they are a poster child for a fundamentalist cult. She's not the only one that uses this terminology. A lot of people use this terminology, called the Advanced Training Institute, and it is run by a man named Bill Gotthard, or I've heard a whole lot of different things. And she comes up with a couple really important, or lays out really clearly a couple really important things that I want you to know. Again, this link will be in the show notes, so I will go ahead and just bring you back to the two of us, but I wanted you to see what it looked like. So the first thing that she and I and a lot of other people want you to know is that the word abuse does not exist within this theological framework. There is no such word as abuse. For instance, the girl that writes this Facebook post says that when she went to the leaders of her church and said that her father abused her, good Lord, people, father was sexually molesting her. All it was called was being inappropriate. There is a deep and utter terror and fear of professional therapy and counseling. You don't need them. That's a reliance on man. That's inappropriate. You always need to be relying on God. Licensed professional therapists are considered dangerous. They were also then as well taught to be thankful for abuse, believe it or not, because it tests your spiritual limits and allows you to reach new levels of spiritual maturity. Wow. Then there's the fact that they're always homeschooled. So it's entirely possible that Anna Duggar, who is Josh's wife, has never met somebody that doesn't believe everything that she already believes.
Yeah.
Entirely possible. Also, there is no dating, there is courting, and it's usually done within the community. So it's not like they went out to dinner or whatever, like to date. Like, again, she's either pregnant with or just delivered their 7th child. So they are also part of this world. Women in the ATI are taught that their calling in life is to stay at home and be a homemaker. And like, that's the highest calling. All of the other things I've talked about purity culture on this channel, all of the other times that I've discussed things, whether it's Handmaid's Tale or the Magdalene conversations in Ireland, everything else, this is almost the most extreme form of that. Like one of the most extreme forms. I think the FLDS in Texas cult, that was probably the most extreme. But like, this is pretty extreme. For instance, I'm going to quote the Facebook post. If Anna Duggar were to divorce and then live in her own home without the presence of an older male to protect her, she has been taught that she would open herself up to attacks from Satan and that God might allow her to be raped or murdered by an intruder out of punishment for being out of submission to the appropriate male head.
Okay.
This all sounds nuts to you if you're watching this. Because if you're watching this, you have access to the internet, which some of these folks don't have. Mm-hmm. And it's entirely possible Anna Duggar does not. Essentially, ATI women are taught if they live under men, they are guaranteed divine protection because men are put on earth to guarantee their divine protection. They practice shunning. They never talk about sex. There's all this kind of stuff. And what I really want you to understand in this is that, of course, they were always going to handle the 2015 allegations among their own community. Of course, they were never going to bring the police in. Of course, they were always going to treat this as not a crime because there isn't really crimes in their world. There's just spiritual testing. And with a subculture that ties their entire understanding of the world around a belief system as strongly as ATI and the Duggars do, then you have to understand, guys, I can't apologize for this enough. I'm so sorry. You have to understand some of that before you can talk about anything else. I mean, the Duggars were in the public eye, and they clearly thought that this was like that their way of life. You know, I've read interviews with the parents that are like, well, we wanted other people to join us in this. They didn't really seem to understand that they were going to be the laughing stock that they were in a lot of ways. They are adjacent to a movement called Quiverful. They are not part of it. They say this very often, but my gosh, the overlap is intense, which is a belief that God will open or close the wombs of women. So things like birth control is sinful. You can't control the number of children that you have. Only God will do that. This is what I hope you can appreciate, so removed from the understanding of American culture in a lot of ways that I am thankful that the federal government has a statute to step in and hold Josh accountable for these potential actions because his community was never going to. That was never going to happen. ATI is incredibly damaging at me. It's incredibly theologically damaging. It's pedagogically damaging. It's just damaging. But a lot of us believe a lot of damaging things every day. And so we would encourage you. It's very, very easy. I am furious about this. Believe it or not, I had to yell a lot to get to this level of logic. I'm furious about this. As a person of faith, I am often could breathe fire at people that take the things I believe, add some words, twist some ideas, and make it sound like it should be something I believe too. It's very, very difficult for me. But most difficult is that a community of a faith system that is supposed to be communally based and protect children needed outside influences, needed the government to step in because they couldn't take care of it themselves. They couldn't go and report themselves. This needed to be a raid. This needed to be something else because the church didn't do what was right and didn't protect children. So there's some really fascinating stuff about the difference between abuse and pornography. There's some great conversations happening online about how we actually shouldn't even use the phrase child pornography because pornography innately involves consent. And so we should be saying the filming or photographic evidence of the abuse of a child. I find that to be something that we've been talking about offline, something that we'll probably be using a little bit more around here on the channel, to differentiate between consent and not consent. So the other thing, one final thing before we turn it over to Northern Ireland, or if Dr. Aaron has questions for me, the federal age of consent is 18. It does not matter what the age of consent is in your state. It does not matter. The federal age of consent is always 18. And that's one of the ways that some of these prosecution might be a little bit easier for them. They don't have to play the game of who lived where. So I am now done.
I hope you feel better.
I do. Thank you. Thank you for the space to be angry with our listeners.
I hope everyone enjoyed that and learned something from it. You know, my look of shock that the institution of ATI protected itself, because institutions protect themselves.
That's what they do.
That is a popular theme of things we discuss on this channel. Speaking of institutions, though, today we are celebrating, recognizing.
There we go.
The institution of the state of Northern Ireland, which as of today is 100 years old. So happy birthday, Northern Ireland. It's been a long 100 years. Centenaries, or what do we call them in the States? Centennials.
Centennials, yeah.
It always just reminds me of Drive Me Crazy. That Melissa Joan Hart and Adrian Grenier film.
I don't think I've actually seen it. I've just seen it on shelves at video stores.
Oh, it's one of my low-key favorite 90s films. But they go to Centennial High. So
okay.
Always in my head I hear that. Which probably literally no one else who watches this knows, because I have some random movie legs, but you know.
But you love what you love wholeheartedly and passionately, which is really all, creators of art can ask for.
You know what? We'll go with it. But yeah, centenaries are a big deal, especially in the island of Ireland and the United Kingdom. In the last couple of years, we had the centenary of the First World War. We had the centenary of the Easter Rising in Ireland and the Battle of the Somme, which was also part of the First World War. So while we were living there, there were lots of centenary celebrations. There was literally a decade of them, as it was called, the decade of centenaries, from 2012 to 2022. So we still have a little bit more to go. But 2021 was always going to be an interesting one because it is the centenary of the founding of Northern Ireland as a state. It is the commemoration of the partition of the island of Ireland, which is very deeply problematic and emotional for a lot of people, because Ireland was one whole, 32 counties, until technically the Government of Ireland Act, which was 1920. But then the Northern Irish Parliament was formed on this day in 1921. So we had the 26 county Irish Free State and the Northern Irish State formed. And if you watched our live a few weeks ago about Northern Ireland, then you know things are not at all, in a way, stable. And they haven't been for the last 100 years. So it's a thing we think you need to know about. You might see, I don't know what's happening in the COVID of it all. I sat in on a fantastic panel last week talking about the legacy of partition with some of my friends and colleagues. John Evershed, who was on Welcome to Our World, and Dr. Laura McAtackney from Northern Ireland, talking about the legacy of partition and that it is a very still active thing that is happening on the island of Ireland. But they talked about what was supposed to happen before the COVID in terms of celebrating the centenary. The British government was notionally going to be involved and is now not because of the COVID. All I saw this morning on my Facebook was a couple murals going up in places like Maherafelt. So it's a deeply difficult thing to commemorate in a country that has always been divided, literally was divided on the basis of division, if that makes sense. The state was formed so that it could be a Protestant majority on a Catholic majority island. Now Northern Ireland is split roughly 50-50 in terms of Catholics and Protestants, but it's still a big deal. There are a lot of people in Northern Ireland that will not be celebrating today or any day partition and the centenary. There are a lot of people who will, and there are a lot of people who don't give a toss. But it is a significant day for a part of this world. And as we talk about more and more on this channel, the legacy of colonialism, this is, again, the murkiness of it, the complicated nature of these relationships, and that colonialism was not a thing that happened. It is a thing that continues to happen. Even if those places are no longer colonies, colonialism and colonization dramatically alter the genes of a place. And so I think those were my thoughts on Northern Ireland. The other thing I wanted to say that you guys need to know about, if you haven't already heard, May is Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Yes, it is.
It is the reason why we are covering Pacific Islands on our Colonizers World Tour. But I wanted to shout it out and say a lot of cool streaming services are doing collections. So I was on Hulu yesterday watching The Handmaid's Tale and saw that they have a tab for AAPI month. Netflix is doing that too, because they did that with Black History Month.
Comcast is, if you've got Xfinity, there's a whole Comcast collection.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're going to be talking about 4 Pacific Island nations over the course of the month, and some art that was produced about them. But, have a poke around, engage with some stories that you don't know. I have absolutely loved learning about the Pacific Island region. There's a whole host of diversity that gets lumped into Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders as a group, which usually those things do. So go learn things. That's it. That's all I've got.
I love it. So it's actually a really great transition, because as you were talking about Drive Me Crazy, our friend Jay agreed that it's a good movie. So
thanks, Jay.
It's a great movie. But also, the thing is, movies are a huge part of self-care for you in particular.
Well, word.
So I would love now to kind of shift to how we learn about how to take care of ourselves a little bit. Because it is an ongoing process. I would like to start this conversation by saying that I don't believe there is any such thing as having a self-care routine that is then set in stone.
No.
It has to evolve with what you're doing. It has to evolve with what means that day. I have a lot of tools in my arsenal because there are different days that different self-care helps for different things. So first of all, those of you who are joining us live, we would love to hear what are some of the things that you do to take care of yourself, either when the day has been really terrible and you're like, screw it, I'm doing this to make me happy and then going to bed, or something you do on an ongoing basis. One of the things that Dr. Aaron does is yoga on an ongoing basis. One of the things that I do on an ongoing basis is write short stories, largely about superheroes falling in love, but they're still short stories. And that's really important to me and an ongoing part of my self-care. So we would absolutely adore to hear from you. If you're catching us on the replay, hello. And we would still love to hear from you, because comments are forever. The internet is written in ink.
Unless it's unkind, and then I will delete it. But as long as it's kind, it will stay forever.
It will stay forever. Okay, so Erin Darling, besides yoga and movies, what are some of the things that you let's do this. What are some of the things you used to do before COVID, and what are some of the things you do now? And is there a big difference? Yeah, because that's the thing I wanted to say too, was we'd love to hear from people how that's changed throughout COVID. Baking, Taylor, yes. Taylor loves baking. A lot of people got into baking over the COVID. I love selling my company instead of ever hearing this alarm ever again. That's good Lord. What is happening in Abbey companies today? Guys, I'm coming for my brother as soon as this is over. Why is this? Oh, alarms. Oh, life. So I would love to hear from people if that changed over COVID, because mine definitely did. I've been practicing yoga on and off, really, with a level in terms of commitment
since 2015, I think 2014, 2015, I started in Northern Ireland, just taking a beginner's yoga class. But for the last 3 years, I've been practicing with a particular teacher and a particular style of yoga called Iyengar. You can look it up. It's very good for type A people because it's very detail oriented. So like all of my yoga friends in all my classes are also like type A people who love the like minutia of the poses. But so for the last 2 or 3 years, I've been practicing Iyengar, but still not like as philosophically as I have in the last year. And all our classes now happen on the Zoom, which is both good and bad. But for me, it's my relationship with my yoga practice has changed a lot in the last year, especially I practice now way more regularly pranayama, which is an arm of yoga that is about helping to manage really your nervous system. That sounds really complicated. A lot of people would say it's a breathing practice, but it's really about learning to control your nervous system. And I'm a highly anxious person, have always been, I'm on medication for it. But that has like pranayama practice has changed my life, and I practice every day. If I don't practice, if I miss a practice of pranayama, it actually brings me anxiety, but that has changed. The other thing I found, was cross stitch, which my mom taught me to do when I was like 10. My mom loves cross stitch. And it took me off the doom scrolling in the evening, especially during the COVID, because I was like watching the news, scrolling the phone, obsessively trying to figure out what the HE double hockey sticks was happening. And it was not healthy. So I have done feminist slogans for all my friends, and I'm still going. Just giving one to a friend this evening. I'm rather excited about it. She doesn't know because it's a surprise for everybody, except Dr. Kristen was the only person who knew she was getting a feminist cross stitch.
I know everything.
I've also had grown an appreciation for gardening. Because when I couldn't go anywhere, at least I could go in my yard. And there's something very cathartic about weeding, I find now, which, like, if you had spoken to me a year or two ago, I would have been like, no, I hate gardening. I hate like, it's annoying. Now I love it very much. And I spent like 5 hours in my garden this weekend. So those are the things that have changed. I also watch movies. I also love to drink gin. Mm-hmm. And I have started this year exploring gin cocktails. And I'm very excited about that. Aside from writing short stories and sipping the old whiskey, what works for you?
Well, before we go to me, I do want to say that Taylor shares with us that she's doing her best Diana impression.
Yeah.
That she would go figure skating a lot, but most of the rinks closed. She tried roller skating. She used to go figure skating is ice skating for anyone who doesn't know that terminology. Tried roller skating, very much enjoyed roller skating around my house, a la Diana from The Crown. Taylor, do you join us for our Crown coverage? I feel like you do. If not, we quite celebrated that visual of her roller skating through Buckingham Palace. So
there's so many people that picked up roller skating as a COVID.
Yeah, as a COVID thing.
Hobby, yeah.
So, and Siobhan, I saw you raise your hand right around the time Dr. Aaron talked about cross stitch. So I hope I'd love to know if that's what, thank you, Taylor. Taylor says she does love our Crown coverage. So glad you joined us for that and our constant rage at,
so angry
at how they choose to tell that story. Siobhan, hope that if that is cross stitching or whatever you have enjoyed, it has brought you peace and joy.
Yeah.
So I love writing short stories. I've been writing forever. Like
the womb. I guarantee you were like writing short stories in the womb.
Probably. Like I went to therapy. I mean, I started going to therapy when I was in 7th grade. So when my parents first
in the womb
for me. Like God bless my parents who didn't understand therapy but knew they couldn't raise me by themselves. Like I was like I have been too much since the womb. But anyway, my anxiety was something they didn't understand and still don't, bless them, but they try to do.
I'll just share this really quick because you made me think of it. One of my yoga friends shared this, like she was going to get this sign for her house that said, raising children, it takes a village and a vineyard. So like your parents don't drink, but like they knew it took a village.
Yeah, they knew it took a village. Yeah, we have a sign in our house that says they need roots and wings. Children need 2 things, roots and wings. because my parents are also cheese balls, especially my mother. I can say these kind of things because my parents don't really understand that YouTube exists. So
she is the cheese ball, though. Like, she is the queen of cheese balls. I love her so much.
My mother is an actual saint among humans. Like, we're not, the fact that she is not dead and we are not Catholic is the only reason she hasn't been like sainted. But anyway, I digress. My therapist, when I was in 7th grade, told me that one of the things I could do to calm myself down at night was tell myself stories.
Oh, that's really nice.
So, like, out loud, I did until I went to college, then had to share a room with another human being, and that was disturbing to that other human being. And so I've been telling myself stories and creating fictional worlds, like since before 12, but definitely since 12. And so when 2019 was actually a really stressful year for me, I got a jump on the COVID anxiety from the rest of you. I've actually been
special.
I don't know. I've been stressed since 2015.
I was about to say, you've been stressed like as long as I've known you.
Yeah,
mostly since 2015.
Like, I'm one of those people that people routinely look at and go, I don't know how you do it. And like, so this is my life. So 2019 is when I started writing, and I joined the Marvel fandom, which is a really big part of it for me, because it's writing in community. It's not just writing short stories and leaving it in my diary like I used to. It's writing with people who like also to write and to read and to create and to brainstorm and to say, well, if this happened, then did this happen? And if this happened, then did this happen? And so a big part of my self-care, both before COVID and during COVID, is that community, is creating these what if stories. And learning, like, I mean, my brother could tell you the starting lineup of the Phillies probably every year for the last 25 years. I know our starting lineup right now, but I also know Tony Stark's shoe size. So that I can write about it in fanfic. And that's been a really important part of my life. This creative outlet to remind myself that when I can't, I feel completely out of control and I feel completely drained and the world is stressful. There is this small corner of my life where creativity still flourishes and I can still bring that in. It also prevents doom scrolling because I'm far too busy talking about like, well, what would happen if they were single parents and went to a dog park? And I don't have to jump on Twitter as much, which is really nice.
Yeah, it's so important though, I think, to the idea of producing something, but not like, you know, and we've talked about this a lot online and offline, but that there shouldn't be a shame in what anyone's self-care is. And so if your self-care is literally just sitting on a couch staring out the window, I think there's so much shame in that, like, you have to do something. Lauren says, singing and nail art. Nail art. Yes, Lauren, I love learning that about you. Lauren's one of our subscribers and regular commenters, so I feel like I know you. Sorry.
If you talk to us on here, we count you friends, by the way, and we often say, did you see what our friend so-and-so said about our video? We're very possessive. If it's creepy, we're sorry. Also, Lauren, I love singing. I was in choirs until like forever, and Dr. Aaron sings in the car all the time.
I love singing.
We love singing. So
I listen to music. Like, music has been my self-care, like, since, I don't know, my parents are both love a lot of music, and that was my whole childhood, was listening to music a lot. On road trips and like literally anywhere, but I listen to music like all the time.
Yeah, she does. True story.
All day. I go into the kitchen to cook dinner, do the dishes. I put music on. I bought a snazzy Bluetooth speaker that I attach to my gardening thing that I take outside and play music.
Thank you for not thinking we're creepy, Lauren. That's very helpful. Yes, and singing is the best. I mean, there's lots of research. I actually did some research for my doctorate on the importance of singing in community and singing and what it does to our bodies when we use our bodies to produce music.
Endorphins, doesn't it? To like sing with other people. Yeah.
It's a bonding element as well. The more you perform and sing with other people, I mean, it's why like bonding on stage is such a big deal among casts. The more you perform the same reality, alternate reality, which music also is, the more you perform that with other people, the closer you are in that new existing reality.
Yeah. And I think like that was what was so hard for so many of us, was that the bonding rituals that we had with other people, like building community with other people. The COVID has forced us to adjust that a lot.
Or abandon them and like just flat out, like, let's just call it out. Like, I know there's people that are doing the online singing choir thing. I could not have. That would not have worked for me. So, Siobhan, I love what you just said. I'm going to put it up on the thing that she says that her husband has every hobby and tells me it's self-care. Take naps, talk on the phone, eat snacks. I don't need one more thing to worry about being perfect at. I love that.
You know what?
I love that.
It's so true. And like
so true.
We talk about, you know, a huge part of my philosophy is practicing non-judgment. I'm not always great at it. It's a practice. But especially about things like that. And one of Dr. Kristen's things forever has been like removing the word guilty from guilty pleasures, because as long as you are not harming yourself or harming others, like whatever it takes, man. And so, Siobhan, we support you. You know, whatever you need to restore yourself, whatever you need to either relinquish control or feel control over something, or feel productive or feel restful. Like, so much of it is about finding rest, and whatever that looks like. And you might find rest in your soul singing or doing nails, or you might find it taking naps and eating snacks. I love snacks.
We both love snacks. I am terrible at napping. I'm jealous of your ability to nap.
You are terrible at napping. I'm good at napping, but I never do it. I love a good nap, though.
You do love a good nap. Jay, we also miss singing in the car. Someday in the after times, we will all sing in cars together. It will be great.
Dr. Kristen and I sing in cars all the time.
We actually have a playlist that like comes with car choreography.
Yeah, my ringtone is a song that we sang together on a road trip in Ireland once from the movie Pitch Perfect, which is one of our favorites. Not the other two because they were terrible. Don't at me, but the first one. Yeah, Taylor. I'm sure college is exhausting in COVID. College was exhausting outside of COVID. So
I had lots of friends that napped all the time between classes in college. I was never napping would actually be an extreme form of self-care for me, because a huge part of it is the discipline to not be productive.
Yeah.
And I struggle a lot with a constant need to be productive on some level. So like, yeah, the thing with writing, I want to go back to what Siobhan said, because I want to mention the perfect thing just for a minute, because it is really important for me.
Yeah.
And I've chatted a lot with actually several of our mutual friends through Abby Research are also writers.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had this conversation a lot with a lot of them, that part of the writing for me has to be that it's never going to be perfect. It's always written in pencil. And it's one of the reasons that I'm in fandom and not in professional writing. Like, these aren't things I can make money on legally. They are just like ideas and fun things. And that has been important for me as a discipline I can't ever be perfect. There's always going to be somebody that didn't like this story. I'm always going to have had a typo. I could have, like, literally, I published a story last week. I had 3 beta readers on it, and my friend Alex still found a typo. So like, there is no such thing as perfection. There is just bringing joy to myself and others. And that's been an incredibly important thing for me. It's why I don't cross stitch, and yoga is a struggle for me, because perfection is inappropriately valued in a lot of the rest of my life. And so when I can find something that allows me to not value perfection, I have to hold on to it with both hands. So I really love what you said about the worry about being perfect at, because that's such an element of this, especially for those of us who grew up in Western nations that are taught that our worth is valued by our productivity.
100%. And I think it can't be said enough. And one of the reasons why we wanted to talk about this was, it's been a really hard year.
Good Lord. That the understatement of forever. Every time someone says that, I want to be like, we need a new word.
And I hate the unprecedented, but it really is unprecedented, except for the 1918 pandemic. But then, here in the States, we had the ongoing trauma of Black Lives Matter and the resurgence of that movement again on the national front, because of the police shootings and murder. We can say murder now of George Floyd. Thankfully, we don't have to say alleged. But there was a lot of stuff happening that was very emotionally charged. And there's, we have to be able to take a step back from that, because we can't keep fighting and learning and, challenging these systems and surviving COVID if we don't take a second out to like take a break, whatever that looks like. And there's also so much judgment in the money-making aspect of self-care. We like to call it the self-care industrial complex.
Play it, please. There's just so much. Oh my gosh.
There's so much judgment in yoga. Like the yoga that I practice and the community that I have is like super non-judgmental. We are not in it to get yoga bodies. Like that's not even a thing. Yoga is about stretching and like lengthening your muscles and strengthening your muscles. That's it. It's not about getting a yoga body, but there's a lot of places that will tell you differently. And there's so much external pressure to take on something that is self-care and then perfect it.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Or to turn it into your hustle. And so I think we just like to be people in spaces that say like, just do it. If you like it, just do it. Like, and that's a great transition to what Jay said. Thanks to a certain doctor. Hi, I take full credit for this. You are welcome, Jay.
Jay.
The joy of reading hockey romances. I think the first one I sent you was Rachel Reed's Game Changer. I could be wrong, but that's a great one.
The joy of Jay, you probably already know this since you are friends with Dr. Kristen in real life, but she also introduced me to the romance genre through hockey romances because another self-care passion of mine is ice hockey. It's the sport of ice hockey. I like to say I've been attending games since I was in the womb, which is true because my parents took me to college hockey games when I was nothing but a tiny cucumber. And I am a huge fan of the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Colorado Avalanche, which was my hometown team. And they're in different conferences, so I can get away with it. But yeah, so Dr. Kristen was like, I think you'd like romance. There's hockey romance. And I was like, what? And I try not to get too critical of the ice hockey of it all. It's a spectrum. It's a spectrum. There's some writers that know what they're talking about. If one more person calls a goal a point, like, oh, we scored a point. No, just stop doing it. But I am with you, Jay. It is a joy of mine. I am currently reading hockey romance as we speak, and it's all because of Dr. Kristen.
I just really hate the idea that anything that doesn't hurt people and brings people joy is something we should feel guilty over.
Yeah.
And so it's, for us, that's the message of self-care is, first of all, prioritizing yourself is incredibly important. I am terrible at it. And so if you, like me, are terrible at it, make sure to surround yourself with people that will call you on that shit. Two of mine are here, Jay and Aaron. And another one of mine will be editing this because Eleanor calls me out as well. So just make sure to surround yourself with people that know that you rarely know what you're actually doing. And who will lovingly force you to prioritize yourself every once in a while.
Yep.
And to remember, we would ask you kindly to not judge yourself either, to remember that, yeah, these times are unprecedented, and guess what? They're going to continue to be unprecedented. It doesn't matter how long we are after this. 2045 will be unprecedented as well, because we will have all lived through this.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that we are rewriting the world, and the way that we are rewriting Lauren just said that healthy boundaries are also self-care, which is completely true.
Yes.
And we're going to put a pin in that because we should probably do an entire live on the idea of boundaries and what that kind of looks like.
We're big on boundary setting. It has to go with self-care. Because if you don't set those boundaries, you'll just get worn out.
Absolutely. And we have some hockey smack talk going on for anyone who's not watching the chat.
That's okay. I think the Avs, I don't know what what team you support, Jay, but chances are if you don't like the Avs, it's because we're beating you. Hey-o.
Well, so that's hard to transition from. Boundaries. No, we've done whole workshops on the idea of understanding rest as countercultural. And so we'll probably bring a little bit of that to alive, and boundaries are a whole big
should, because you should explain why Americans are so special. You really should.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, let's talk about our friends, the Puritans. And, Yeah, who would like me to be history professor? Because I will do it. We let our nerd flags fly here. Anyway, folks, we're gonna wrap it up here for this Monday, May 3rd, with a deep hope that as you go about your day and your time and your week until we see you again, or maybe we'll see you for the next video that posts on the channel, that you find yourself in a space where you can claim your own priority just a little bit. And if there's other things you want us to talk about, please make sure to let us know.
Yes. Do you, don't judge yourself, try not to judge others, and do whatever it takes to get you to the next day. Because that's all where we're at. Thanks for joining us and for commenting, Siobhan and Jay and Lauren and Taylor and everybody else that watches. We love to engage with you guys, as is very clear, and we will see you guys next week.
Bye, everybody.